The Arizona sun hung low, swollen and red, as if the sky itself were bleeding onto the land. Heat pressed down on the road like a hand that meant to crush, and the dust rose with every step Eliza Monroe took, clinging to her boots, her hem, her skin. The road stretched ahead in a cruel ribbon, shimmering and endless, offering no shade, no promise, only distance. Eliza's breath came slow and measured, each inhale burning her chest. Sweat traced down her temples and vanished into the collar of her faded brown dress, patched so many times the fabric told the story of years spent surviving rather than living. She was a plus-sized woman, broad-hipped and strong-shouldered, built for work and endurance, yet hunger had hollowed her eyes and sharpened the lines around her mouth. Her body carried resilience, but her spirit bore the bruises of too many closed doors. A worn leather satchel thumped softly against her hip. Inside were 3 dresses folded thin as regret, her late mother's Bible, its spine cracked, pages soft from use, and a small pouch of coins she had counted too many times to forget. $3.11. Not enough to buy security. Barely enough to buy time. Eliza had left Georgia with hope stitched tight into her chest. She had believed the stories whispered in kitchens and churchyards, that out west land mattered more than lineage, that work could outweigh skin. But every mile she traveled stripped another layer of that belief away. In Missouri they had laughed. In Kansas they had turned their backs. In New Mexico, they had not even bothered to look at her hands before saying the words that had followed her like a curse. We don't hire colored women. By the time the outline of Red Hollow emerged from the haze, Eliza's legs trembled beneath her. The town crouched under the sun, a cluster of wooden buildings bleached pale by heat and time. A saloon slouched at the corner, its doors open to release the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. A general store sat opposite, its porch crowded with barrels and men who stopped talking the moment they saw her. Eliza straightened her spine. She had learned that dignity was the one thing no one could take unless she handed it over herself. Eyes followed her as she entered town, measuring, judging, dismissing. Women paused mid-conversation. Children whispered behind cupped hands. A man at the saloon leaned back in his chair and smirked dust near her feet as she passed. Eliza did not slow. She kept her gaze forward, her steps steady, though her stomach clenched tight with hunger. She tried the seamstress first. The shop smelled of starch and soap, bolts of fabric stacked neatly against the walls. The woman behind the counter smiled when Eliza laid out a neatly sewn shirt, every stitch even, every seam clean. "You did this?" the woman asked. "Yes, ma'am." The smile lingered until the woman's eyes lifted fully to Eliza's face. The warmth vanished, replaced by a thin, practiced politeness. "I'm sorry," she said, already sliding the shirt back. "We don't hire colored women." The words landed like a slap. Eliza nodded once and left. The cafe refused her without letting her finish her sentence. The general store owner claimed he had no work, though 2 boys were sweeping right behind him. At the blacksmith's, a man laughed outright and told her to keep moving before she caused trouble. By noon, the sun sat directly overhead, and Eliza's strength gave out. She sank onto the stone steps of the small church at the edge of town, her back against the cool wall, her breath shallow. The bell above her head was silent, unmoved by her quiet desperation. She opened her satchel and counted the coins again, as if numbers might change through sheer will. They did not. 2 meals, 1 night's lodging if she begged the innkeeper. After that, nothing. Eliza closed her eyes briefly. Begging was a line she had sworn never to cross. She would starve before she groveled. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in her memory, steady and firm. "Hold yourself upright, child, even when the world bends you low." When she opened her eyes, resolve hardened where despair had tried to settle. There was one place left. The name had drifted through town like a warning wrapped in awe. Gideon Blackwell, owner of Iron Ridge Ranch, wealthy, powerful, a man rumored to be as unforgiving as the land he ruled. Some said he buried his past out on the plains. Others claimed trouble followed him like a shadow. All agreed on one thing. Iron Ridge was the largest operation for miles, and its master answered to no one. Eliza arose, brushing dust from her skirt. Her legs protested, but she forced them forward, following the dirt road that led out of Red Hollow. The farther she walked, the quieter the world became, until only wind and the crunch of gravel beneath her boots remained. The iron gates of Iron Ridge rose against the horizon at last, tall, black, and imposing. Beyond them stretched fields scorched gold by summer, fences running straight and true, a two-story ranch house standing firm against the sky. The sight made Eliza's heart pound painfully against her ribs. From the porch, a tall figure moved. A man stepped into the light, his silhouette carved sharp against the sinking sun. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face, his stance solid, unyielding, as if the land itself had shaped him. Eliza stopped at the gate, fingers tightening around her satchel strap. Weariness, hunger, pride, and fear tangled inside, but one truth stood clear above them all. If this gate did not open, her journey ended here. She lifted her chin and took one final step forward, eyes locked on the man watching from the porch. The sun slid lower, staining the world red, and fate, silent and merciless, waited for him to speak.
The iron gates of Iron Ridge Ranch stood shut, their black bars hot to the touch, humming faintly beneath the sun. Eliza Monroe halted before them, chest rising and falling, as if the land itself had knocked the breath from her. Behind her lay the long road, the closed doors of Red Hollow, and the slow certainty of starvation. Ahead stood wealth, power, and a man whose shadow stretched longer than the fence. From the porch of the ranch house, Gideon Blackwell descended the steps with measured strides. He did not hurry. Men like him never did. His boots struck the ground with dull finality as he crossed the yard, the sun at his back, turning him into a hard-edged silhouette. When he stopped several paces from the gate, he did not open it. "This is private land," he called, voice low and even. "You shouldn't be here." Eliza swallowed. The words were familiar, yet she forced herself to speak. "I'm looking for work, sir." Gideon's gaze moved over her without apology. He took in her broad shoulders, the sturdy curve of her hips, the worn but clean dress clinging to a body shaped by labor rather than leisure. He noted the satchel, the dust on her boots, the exhaustion she tried to mask with dignity. "I can cook, sir. I can clean, sew. I keep accounts. I work hard. I don't cause trouble. All I ask is wages and a place to sleep." Silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. A hawk cried somewhere overhead. Gideon's expression did not soften. "I don't hire women, and I don't hire colored women at all." The words landed square in her chest. Eliza's fingers curled tight around the satchel strap, nails biting into leather. She had heard that sentence so many times it felt carved into her bones. She nodded once, preparing to turn away, pride stiffening her spine, even as despair clawed at her insides. Then Gideon spoke again. "Unless," he said, slowly, deliberately, "you agree to marry me today, before sunset." Eliza froze. The desert wind stirred her skirt, lifted loose strands of hair against her cheek, but she barely felt it. For a heartbeat, she thought exhaustion had finally made her lose her senses. "What?" she whispered. Gideon stepped closer to the gate, resting one hand on the iron bar. Up close, his face was cut from sun and stone, weathered skin,
hard lines, eyes the color of storm clouds held in check. There was no mockery in his expression, no humor, only resolve. "My name's Gideon Blackwell. I own Iron Ridge. I need a wife on paper. The law says I lose my northern land tract by sundown if I don't have one. You need shelter. I need a signature. That's the trade." Eliza let out a short, brittle laugh. "You think I'm that desperate?" "I think you're honest and out of time." Anger flared hot and sharp. "You don't know me." "I know you've got less than $4 in that satchel. The cheapest room in Red Hollow costs $1 a night. In 3 days, you'll be sleeping on the ground. In 5, you'll be begging. You don't strike me as a woman who begs." Her breath caught painfully. The truth of his words stripped her bare. She hated him for seeing it, hated herself for knowing he was right. "You could ask someone else, one of the women in town." "Already did, 3 times. They all ran before the ink dried. You're the last chance I have before sunset." Eliza stared at him, memories of whispered rumors surfacing unbidden. A rancher who cycled through brides like broken tack, a man no woman stayed with, a name spoken with unease. She searched his face for cruelty, for amusement, for any hint this was a joke played at her expense. She found none. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why would you think I'd agree to something like this?" Gideon shrugged, the motion curt. "Because you know hunger, because you don't expect kindness from men like me, and because you look strong enough to survive this land." Shame burned her throat. He had reduced her life to facts, stripped of comfort or pretense. Yet beneath the bluntness lay a truth she could not deny. The sun edged lower, bleeding red across the plains. Time slipped through her fingers with every passing second. "If I say yes," she said, slowly, forcing her voice steady, "I set conditions." Something flickered in Gideon's eyes, perhaps surprise or respect, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "Name them." "I want fair wages for the work I do. I want my own room. I won't be touched or forced, and if I choose to leave, you won't stop me." Gideon considered her in silence, weighing more than her words. At last, he nodded. "Wages and a room, yes. I won't force you. But marriage isn't easily undone. The law here binds tight. Understand that." Eliza's pulse thundered in her ears. The road behind her offered nothing but slow death. The gate before her promised survival, at a cost she could scarcely measure. The sun dipped closer to the horizon. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, memories flooding in, her mother's steady hands, her father's worn ledgers, the long nights she had gone to bed hungry but unbroken. When she opened them, resolve blazed where fear had been. "I accept," she said. For the first time, Gideon's composure cracked. Not triumph, something closer to astonishment crossed his face. He reached out, unlocking the gate with a metallic groan. "Then we ride," he said. "The judge is still in town." As Eliza stepped through the gate, the iron closed behind her with a final clang that echoed across the land. The sun dipped lower, and with that sound, her old life ended. Red Hollow seemed smaller when Eliza Monroe returned riding beside Gideon Blackwell, as though the town itself had shrunk under the weight of what it was about to witness. Heads turned long before they reached the main street. Whispers followed them like dust devils, curling and clinging, hungry for scandal. A black woman on the seat beside Iron Ridge's owner, married by sunset. Eliza sat straight-backed on the horse, her hands folded in her lap, refusing to clutch at the saddle or bow her head. Her heart pounded hard enough to shake her ribs, but she would not give the town the satisfaction of seeing her fear. If she was to be judged, she would meet it standing tall. The justice of the peace looked up as they entered his office, surprise flickering across his narrow face. His gaze slid from Gideon to Eliza, lingering too long. "Well now," he drawled, leaning back in his chair, Didn't expect to see you again so soon, Blackwell. Gideon removed his hat. We're here to be married. The room fell silent. The justice's eyes narrowed. This lawful? Entirely. Before sunset. The man hesitated, glancing at the window where the sky burned orange and red. Time pressed close. With an exaggerated sigh, he reached for the ledger. Names. Eliza Monroe, she said clearly, before Gideon could speak for her. Something shifted then, perhaps because she claimed her own name, or perhaps because the moment demanded it. The justice scribbled it down, his pen scratching like a verdict. The ceremony was swift and stripped of warmth. No flowers, no witnesses beyond the clerk and a deputy leaning in the doorway. Vows were reduced to legal phrasing, words spoken without tenderness, binding them together with the cold efficiency of ink. "Do you accept?" "I do," Gideon said. Eliza's mouth felt dry, but she forced the words past her lips. "I do." The justice stamped the page. "By the authority vested in me." Just like that, it was done. No kiss followed, no smile. Gideon only offered his arm, and Eliza took it because refusing would invite questions she was not prepared to answer. Outside, the town watched. A woman spat near the hitching post. A man laughed outright. Others simply stared, confusion and judgment twisting their features. "That won't last," someone muttered. Eliza heard every word. She carried them like stones in her pockets as Gideon helped her back onto the horse and turned them toward Iron Ridge. The ranch greeted them with no celebration. Men paused mid-task as they rode through the yard, their expressions ranging from disbelief to outright hostility. The foreman, Cal Rourke, tipped his hat with a crooked grin that never reached his eyes. "So that's the new missus. Didn't know you were collecting contracts now, boss." Gideon's jaw tightened. "You'll show respect, or you'll find work elsewhere." Cal laughed, but fell silent. The others scattered, though their stares lingered. Eliza dismounted stiffly, exhaustion settling deep into her bones now that the strain of the day had lifted. Gideon led her inside the house, the door closing with a heavy finality behind them. The interior was neat, sparse, and carefully ordered. No personal touches softened the space. It felt more like a place guarded than lived in. "There's a room upstairs. It's yours," Gideon said. She nodded, following him up the stairs. The room he opened was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a wash basin, and a window overlooking the plains. It was more than she had hoped for, and less than she deserved. "I'll expect you at supper if you're able, but there's no obligation." "I'll come." At least work would ground her. She washed quickly, scrubbing dust and sweat from her skin, braiding her hair with care. When she came downstairs, Gideon was already seated at the table. They ate in near silence, the scrape of cutlery loud in the stillness. "You'll be paid for work you do here, $50 a month." Eliza nearly dropped her fork. "That's more than—" "I know," he cut in. "You'll also have access to the ledgers. I need someone I can trust." The word trust echoed strangely between them. After supper, Gideon stood. "We'll need to present ourselves as married in town. Beyond that, your space is your own." That night, Eliza lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the wind rattled the windows. She listened to the sounds of the house, the creak of floorboards, the distant closing of Gideon's door. She felt no comfort in the arrangement, only the weight of it pressing against her chest. Days passed, settling into uneasy rhythm. Eliza arose before dawn, working alongside the hands, organizing supplies, balancing accounts that hadn't been properly kept in years. She noticed things Gideon did not explain. Payments marked but unexplained, land maps rolled tight and hidden away, men riding past the far fence at night. The ranch whispered of secrets. One afternoon, while sorting ledgers, Eliza's brow furrowed. A pattern emerged. Monthly payments sent north under false names. When Gideon entered, she looked up. "You're being bled." His expression hardened. "No, I'm buying time." "For what?" she asked. He hesitated, just long enough to confirm her suspicion. For a fight I can't afford to lose." Outside, thunder rolled low across the plains. Eliza closed the ledger slowly, realizing that her marriage had not only tied her to a man, but to a war already underway. The wind changed the night everything broke open. It came in sharp and restless, cutting across the plains with a hiss that set the tall grass whispering like voices that knew too much. Eliza Blackwell stood at the kitchen window of Iron Ridge, watching the horizon darken, a tight knot of unease coiling in her chest. Storms in this country never announced themselves kindly. They arrived with intention. Behind her, Gideon Blackwell spread maps across the table, their edges weighted with old horseshoes and stones. Firelight danced across his face, carving shadows into the hard lines of it. For days now, tension had lived in the house with them, unspoken but heavy, settling into every quiet moment. "You should stop paying them," Eliza said at last, turning from the window. "Whatever game this is, it's bleeding you dry." Gideon didn't look up. Stopping would only hasten what's coming. Eliza crossed the room, resting her palms against the table. She had spent weeks reading his ledgers, tracing the flow of money, learning the bones of Iron Ridge better than anyone. "You're not buying protection," she said. "You're baiting a trap." Gideon met her gaze then, something dark flickering behind his eyes. "Because I need proof." Before she could ask more, a sharp crack split the night. A gunshot. Eliza flinched as a second followed, closer this time. Gideon was already moving, sweeping his rifle from the wall and heading for the door. "Stay inside," he ordered. "No," Eliza said, grabbing her shawl. "I'm not hiding while you bleed alone." The smell reached them before the sight of it. Kerosene, sharp and unmistakable. Flames leapt near the far fence, licking hungrily at the dry grass. Horses screamed in their stalls. "They've come," Gideon muttered. Figures moved beyond the firelight, shadows armed with torches and guns. Eliza's heart thundered, but her mind sharpened. She caught sight of a wagon cresting the hill, lanterns swinging wildly. And there, illuminated by the blaze, stood Silas Crow. He dismounted slowly, boots crunching against gravel, a smile cutting wide across his face. Wealth clung to him like armor. Crow surveyed the chaos as if it were entertainment arranged for his pleasure. "Evening, Blackwell. Heard you were entertaining guests." Gideon stepped forward, rifle raised. "You step 1 foot closer and I'll drop you where you stand." Crow laughed. "You won't. Not yet. You need witnesses." Eliza's gaze flicked to the men behind Crow, ranch hands from neighboring land, hired guns, and among them, one face she recognized with a chill. The land clerk. The man Gideon had been paying. The truth slammed into place. "You've been stealing his land, using forged deeds and fire to drive him off." Crow tipped his hat. "Smart woman. Shame you married into the wrong side." A torch sailed through the air, crashing against the north storage shed. Flames roared up instantly. The heat pressed against Eliza's face, sweat breaking out along her spine. "This doesn't end tonight," Gideon said. "The law will come." Crow's smile widened. "The law works for whoever owns it." Shots rang out, wood splintered, men shouted, horses reared. Eliza ducked as a bullet tore through the fence beside her. She grabbed Gideon's arm, pulling him close. "The proof," she hissed. "You have it. Don't lose it." Gideon's eyes widened in realization. He turned, shouting orders to his men, directing them to hold the line while he and Eliza sprinted for the office. Smoke filled the air, stinging Eliza's eyes as they burst inside. Gideon wrenched open a hidden panel behind the desk, pulling out a bundle of papers wrapped in oilcloth. Deeds, letters, payment records. The sound of boots thundered outside. Eliza scanned the room, heart racing. "We won't outrun them." Gideon grabbed her shoulders. "Then we don't." They burst back outside just as Crow strode toward the house, flanked by armed men. Gideon held the papers aloft. You wanted proof? Here it is. Forged deeds, bribes, signed by your clerk." The land clerk stumbled back, face draining of color. He said, Crow turned on him with lethal calm. "You talk too much." The gunshot echoed louder than the others. The clerk fell. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Then the sheriff's whistle pierced the chaos. Men on horseback flooded the yard, lanterns blazing, guns lowered. Crow's confidence faltered for the first time. Eliza exhaled shakily, her legs threatening to give out. She had sent the messenger hours earlier, trusting her instincts over fear. The fire crackled, consuming Crow's lies as surely as it devoured the shed. As Crow was dragged away, he locked eyes with Eliza, hatred burning bright. "This isn't over," he snarled. Eliza stood her ground, smoke curling around her like a shroud. "For you," she said quietly, "it is." The storm broke then, rain crashing down, dousing the flames. Iron Ridge stood scarred, but standing. And in the aftermath, Eliza realized something had shifted forever. She had not just survived the night, she had claimed her place in it.
Morning came to Iron Ridge softly, as if the land itself were exhausted from the violence of the night before. Mist clung low to the grass, and the scent of wet earth replaced smoke and ash. Where fire had raged, blackened beams now stood like quiet witnesses, reminders of how close everything had come to ruin. Eliza Blackwell stood at the edge of the damaged field, her shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. Sleep had barely touched her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flames, heard gunfire, felt the sharp certainty that one wrong step could have ended her life on that soil. Yet she was still standing. So was Iron Ridge. Behind her, the ranch slowly stirred awake. Men moved more carefully now, their voices subdued, their glances toward her different. Where suspicion and mockery had once lived, there was something else, respect, earned not through marriage, but through courage. Gideon Blackwell approached quietly, boots damp with dew. He looked older in the daylight, the weight of the past night etched deep into his face. In his hands were the folded papers recovered from the office, now stamped, sealed, and very much real. "The sheriff sent word at dawn. Crow's finished. Charges won't stick to him this time. Too many witnesses. Too much proof." Eliza nodded, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "The land clerk? Alive. Talking more than he ever should have. He'll hang or rot in prison. Either way, Iron Ridge is safe." Safe. The word settled uneasily in Eliza's chest. Safety had always been temporary in her life, something borrowed and easily reclaimed. She turned to Gideon, meeting his eyes squarely. "I didn't agree to marry into a war, but I won't pretend I regret standing in it." Gideon's jaw tightened. "I never meant to put you in danger." "No," Eliza said evenly. "You meant to use me." The truth hung between them, heavy but necessary. "Yes," Gideon admitted, "at first." He took a breath as if bracing himself against a blow. "I saw someone who needed shelter as badly as I needed time. I told myself that made it fair." "It didn't," Eliza replied, "but it made it honest." Silence stretched. A meadowlark sang somewhere beyond the fence, oblivious to human ruin and reconciliation alike. "I won't cage you here," Gideon said at last. "The law will finalize everything by next week. After that, you're free." Eliza considered the horizon, the same endless road that had once offered only hunger and dismissal. Now it looked different, not kinder, perhaps, but less cruel. "I know," she said. "And?" Gideon asked quietly. Eliza turned to him fully. "I'm not leaving, not because I have to, but because I choose to stay." Gideon's breath caught. "As my wife?" Eliza's gaze was steady, unflinching. "As your equal. We can decide the rest together, or not at all." A slow smile touched Gideon's mouth, careful and unassuming. "Then I'd be honored."
The sun slipped below the horizon, bathing Iron Ridge in twilight. Once a proposal had been made out of desperation, bound by law and fear. Now what remained after sunset was something far rarer. A woman who had claimed her worth, a man who had learned restraint, and a future no longer written in ash, but in choice.